the only thing that comes even close to that is when you go south of the Mason-Dixon line, like in the area where my son ministers, every corner, you can't drive a mile. On every corner, there's a Bible-preaching Baptist church. I did an experiment one time I was down there. I pulled out of their church driveway, made a right-hand turn, went in a 5-mile circle. And I'm not kidding you. There was a Baptist church on every corner. And then on the main drag, there were 3 of them. I came back around to the church, pulled in there, and I started shaking my head. And I said to my son, I said, how are these churches, I said, how can there be so many Baptist churches? And he says, well, most of them are splits from one another. Okay, now, all that said to say that fundamental, Bible-believing Christians are never going to be in the majority. So when you read this passage, think about that. Be not afraid of them. For the Lord thy God is what? With thee, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. That was a marvelous thing in its own right. It shall be when you are come nigh unto the battle. That's always a freaky part of it. The closer you get, you know it's coming. You plan for it, you drill for it, but when it is on the doorstep, that's a different thing altogether. It has physiological reaction in the body. The heart starts palpitating, you lose your air, the mouth gets dry. Okay, so when you get nigh to the battle, that the priest shall approach and speak unto the people, and shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, ye approach this day unto battle against your enemies. Let not your hearts faint. Fear not, do not tremble, neither be ye terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is he that goeth what? With you. With you. To fight for you against your enemies, to save you. Now think about that for a minute. To the nation of Israel. The constant omnipresence of God with a promise to fight their battle. He did not excuse them from the battlefield. Sometimes he made them stand into the battle, come to the battle line, and to watch what he would do. Over and over again, you see that in the Old Testament. When you see the transition that's going to take place from Moses to Joshua, for example. Here's what he told them in Joshua, or Deuteronomy 31, verses 6 to 8. He says, Be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid. God doth go with thee. Told Joshua that. So that means that Moses is going to die before he crosses over. Joshua's going to take the helm. And the first thing they're going to have to reckon is a flooded river. And where's God in the flooded river? He's with them. When they get across the river, the next thing they come to is the city of Jericho. Where is God when they're about to get into the gates of Jericho? He's with them. He gives them instruction. He doesn't excuse them from the battle. He just said, I'm going to be there. How many of you can recall the casualty count on the part of Israel at the Battle of Jericho? Can you give me a number? 0. Exactly right. 0. That's amazing. Would all of the battles that are fought by men would be like that on the side of the right? So you have that with Joshua. Then there's Jehoshaphat. King Jehoshaphat, he's a good king. In 2 Chronicles 20, verse 17, we have an account there. Set yourselves, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord. Fear not, for the Lord your God will be with you. With you. I'm just amazed at that. Then there's Hezekiah in 2 Chronicles 32. Be strong, courageous, be not afraid for the king of Assyria. That's Nebuchadnezzar, I do believe. Nor for all the multitudes with him. The enemy will always seek to intimidate by sheer number or the illusion of number. If he can convince God-fearing people that you have no hope because you can't possibly win, you'll lose by attrition, if anything else, then he's won the day. But you might be reduced to one. You might be reduced to one last soldier. You might be the only voice on a sinking ship like Paul was in Acts 27. And if God is there, God wins. And he uses people like you and me, like he did then. There's no genetic difference between Joshua or Moses or me and you, or Hezekiah or Jehoshaphat. No genetic or human beings. We're subject to the same frailties from generation to generation to generation. Yet to Hezekiah, he said, don't be afraid. The Lord our God is with us to help. Then there is David, King David. I'm trying to blow through this as quickly as I can. In Psalm 46, verses 1 to 2, God is our refuge and strength. And the rest of that verse says, and he is a very present help in time of need. Very present. I want you to think about this. I probably mentioned this over the years about 60 times. I don't remember what I said 60 times, but maybe you do. But when we come to that place in Psalm, the word matzah is there. And so when you link that with what we do on Communion Sunday, the matzah bread ought to be a reminder of just where God is. Yes, we look back at the cross. He's not there. We look back at the open tomb. He's not there. Where is he? He's seated at the heavens beside the Father. But when we sit down and we take at that communion table, we ought to be reminded of the omnipresent God. He is our very present help in time of need. When we think about this line of thought with Isaiah, behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. The Lord Jehovah is my strength. Even I, am he that comforteth. Who art thou? The question is asked in that place in Isaiah. Who art thou that thou shouldst be afraid of man that shall die? Do you fear another mortal? Do we need to be afraid of what man can do to us? Now, he can do a lot. Man is very ingenious in his wickedness. And thrown into that sack, do you suppose they might have been afraid? I would be afraid. They'd have a real hard time getting me inside of a sack to sew me up. I think probably I would see my demise before they put this last stitch in. And so we are feeble and we are frail. And when we are pushed right to the brink, then faith, in spite of what we know theologically, sometimes becomes distant from us. And so I want to challenge you with this. Isaiah also said, he giveth, E-T-H-F, he giveth power to the faint. To them that have no might, he increaseth strength. He did then, he does now. So what does that mean to us? It's nice to see that in David's life, in Daniel's life, in Isaiah, Hezekiah, and Jehoshaphat, and Moses, and Joshua. And nice to see Abram and all of them be the beneficiaries of God's omnipresent largesse. But what about us? What about you people here at Grace Baptist Church in Katanning, Pennsylvania? What about us today? How does that truth, that doctrinal truth of God's omnipresence apply to us practically from day to day? For example, we consider some writings to the church. Famous one, to Romans, to the Church of Rome. If God be for us, how do you finish it? What's the rest of it? Is there anybody? Oh, yeah, there can be many who are against us, but will there be anybody who prevails against us? No, not at all. To the church at Rome. If God be for us, who can be against us? To the Corinthian church, he says, Paul did in the latter part of the second epistle, says, my strength is made perfect in weakness. Fear of the dread and the debilitating effects of the thorn in the flesh is really daunting, is it not? I mean, even before something starts hurting, you think it might, and so you're running for the medicine cabinet. You know, I think my leg's going to hurt tonight, so I'm heading for the medicine cabinet. I'll get me a couple ibuprofen so that I don't have to worry about it when I go to sleep. And I try to live by this motto. I'm not always successful. You probably know what it is. Don't make a problem till you what? Till you have a problem. It's easy to preach. It's harder to live by. And so, you know, your mind's eye is searching your medicine cabinet for what might be ailing you tonight. I'm already thinking in my brain, what am I going to do when I go home tonight? And the clock strikes 10:30. I know I got to go to bed, put my machine on and all that, but I know I'm not going to last tonight. So what should I do? get my spray out and put all over my legs and get my ibuprofen, get my easy sleep and drink the nectar, all of that. God says, don't make a problem if you have a problem. And when the problem comes, guess where I'm going to be? Guess where I'm going to be? Right there. Right there. Every sleepless night, he joins you. Every painful hour, he's there. He never fails. He will not forsake you. So Paul says, my strength is made perfect in weakness. Says the Lord our God, my grace is sufficient for thee, the grace of his power, the power of Christ resting upon me, to the Ephesian church. Chapter 3, verse 16 are these words, according to the riches of his glory is granted to be strengthened with all might by his Spirit in the inner man. In the inner man. And I think that the Spirit of God made that a point, the inner man, because men like to put on an outward show. Men particularly. Women are tougher. But men like to put on an outward show. If something is really agonizing inside, they're not going to show it because, that's machismo. You gotta be the man. You gotta set the example. Inside, everything is raging, but outside, everything is grinning. Okay? But we can to be strengthened with might by his power in the inner man. God desires truth in the inward parts. Truth. There's no sense hiding it. Remember this reference to the church at Philippi, chapter 4, verse 13. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me, and keeps on strengthening. Keeps on. The Lord upholdeth the righteous. Thou upholdest me with thy right hand. That verse in Psalm 41:12, thou upholdest me and settest me in thy presence before thy face, and I love this word, forever. And I've said this a couple times. Forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I'll probably do a lot more if the pastor gives me opportunity. One of the challenges that I've taken on for myself, and I encourage you to do the same, is to strive to live every single day, every minute of every day, conscious of the Lord's presence. Conscious of the Lord's presence. Now, I know you get busy doing this, doing that, going here, going there, all kind of distractions, but strive to live in a practical way in the light of God's presence. Remember what Psalm said, thou upholdest me and settest me in thy presence before thy face forever. Forever. The Lord upholdeth all that fall and raiseth up those that bow down, whether in sorrow, like the John Hill family's doing, or in sickness, like baby Gus and his family are enduring, like this baby Newton that their family's going through. And then there's sin. Do you realize that sin is running amok even at Grace Baptist Church? You realize that? In Grace Baptist Church? And it's heartbreaking, disturbing. A great hindrance to sleep it is. Each are linked, however, to fear, even the anticipation of such. A lot of people like to live by the what ifs of life. You know what I mean by that, the what ifs of life? Well, I don't know if I should do this or do that. What if this happens? Or what if that happens? You can live like that. You can live like that. But in any case, fear not. Our omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient God is our comfort, and said I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. In Job chapter 36, he withdraweth not his eyes from the righteous. When I read that this morning, and I made this extra note, I just sat back in my chair, and I sat in awe that while I'm sitting there by myself in my study, not even the cat's in there bothering me, the eyes of my God are upon me in that room. He's watching me. My Father's eyes are on me. He never is distracted in his gaze upon his children. Never. So even when the storm of life is raging, You know, we sing, Master, the tempest is raging in our church sometimes. Next Wednesday might deal something with that. But I read out of Brother Spurgeon's little treatise this morning some thoughts that stuck with me and brought forth some other considerations. He says, be that one lone soul on board a sinking ship. I'm thinking about solitariness. Do you recall the person in the Bible, apart from Christ now, but in addition to Christ, who spent a good bit of his life in solitary fashion on the Isle of Patmos, and he was in the Spirit on the Lord's day by himself. Nobody to impress at church. He was with the Lord on the Lord's day. So who will live by faith? He who will live by faith in God alone shall be even, it shall even be as God hath said, be of good cheer. Paul said to those people on board that vessel in Acts 27, he said, be of good cheer. What do you mean, Paul? For 14 days we've been in this storm. The bottom is coming up. There's no let up in the rain or the winds. And you say, be of good cheer? And he said, yeah, and more than that. So take something, get something to eat. You're going to need it. And why would he say that? He said, whoa, he said, there stood by me, omnipresent, there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am and whom I serve. He stood by me on that vessel. God was in the storm. And he's what Paul said to those people, the soldiers and the sailors. It shall be even as God hath said. He's living by faith. So we of kindred spirit may look for timely interpositions when our case is at its worst. And I know some of you over the course of your life have shared with me, and I've observed personally, you've been in some pretty worst case scenarios, some of you. And though it may break your heart, and I'm sure it does, it's not easy when it's happening. It's not easy for those who observe. Our angelic comforts shall be frequent in our nights of tempest and tossing. We sing, Master, the tempest is raging, when anchors would no longer hold and the rocky shoals draw nigh. Thus do we hear the refrain in that hymn, peace, peace, peace be still. So then, amidst all the darkness, hush my fear, dear Lord, for loud roars the windy tempest sea. Thy presence, Lord, shall comfort me. Thy presence, Lord, shall comfort me. Tonight, just a simple, practical consideration of the doctrine of the omnipresent God. You can't go anywhere without him looking at you, looking after you. You can't go anywhere where he is not. And it's one thing to have somebody looking over your shoulder who has your worst interests at heart, but it's quite another comforting thing to know that you have someone looking over your shoulder who loves you so dearly, feels your every pain. You can't experience anything but what he hasn't already gone before you. And it sheds a sympathizing tear. Would you pray with me, please? Our Father and our God, we thank you for your dear people. We thank you for your very presence. Help us, Lord, to live in the light of it every single day, every hour of the day, until we actually and finally see you face to face. Lord, what will it be that first 60 seconds in your presence in glory? What would it be like? Help us, Lord, to mentally chew on that and prepare for such. We'll give you all the praise for your work today in saving souls and reviving the saints. Bring glory to yourself in either case at all times for Jesus' sake. Amen. Thank you for your kindness and for your attentiveness, my dear friends. God go with you home. Unless you have a song you want to sing. If you suggest it and I don't know it, you're singing it. Anybody? I didn't think so.